Hey folks, it is time for another segment in my 2016 Top 100, although we've slipped into 2017. What are you going to do? I like to say that my Top 100 is so epic that it straddles 2 years. Yeah, that's what the story that we're going with. But in any case, let's rush through them as quick as we can. Now we're up to number 40. 40 through 31 to be precise for this segment. Let's get right to it. My number 40 is Pandemic Legacy from Z-Man Games. It was my number 23 last year, so it slid a little bit just because it's not as new and fresh anymore. It had literally almost just come out like a month or two before I did my list last year. It is ranked numero uno, number one overall of all board games on Board Game Geek. So a lot of people love this game, but a lot of people hate it, and that was not a popular thing when that happened. Or obviously it was, but there were a lot of people who were not happy with that coup when Pandemic Legacy knocked out Twilight Struggle, which is an okay game. It's got an average user rating of 8.7, and it's, again, from Z-Man Games, Rob Daviau and Matt Leacock, and that's important right there, those two designers, because you're taking the core game of Pandemic from Matt Leacock, which is a fine game. It's a game I was never really in love with. It actually, I think it made it on my list at least one time, but then I kind of really, even with the expansions, it just felt very bland over time. Just didn't work for me, but it's a solid game. And then you're mixing it with the legacy system, where a game permanently changes over time with every game that you play over a set number of games. From Rob Daviau, who popularized it with Risk Legacy, which was on my list way, way back. But the thing with Risk Legacy was you're taking the awesome legacy system and it's essentially like putting lipstick on a pig, because Risk is not a good game. I'm sorry, it's just not. I've got fond memories of it from when I was a kid, but it's a random, frustrating dice fest. But Pandemic is a solid core game, and putting legacy with that is a winner. Same theme, you are a bunch of first responders and scientists and researchers trying to put a stop to these global pandemics. But over the course of the game, you're going to have different effects, whether you win or lose. You keep track of these things. There's different changes that come in the game, some small, some drastic. Characters that you play as change, and learn things and get stronger or weaker. The board will change permanently. I don't want to spoil too much here. And it just random events will happen that can just be catastrophic or very helpful for you. Not as much. Just a lot of crazy stuff can happen in this game permanently, and it keeps carrying over, so it helps if you play with the same group of players. Now, for that reason, a lot of people don't like the game. It does hamper it that you have to play with the same group of people, preferably. And there's just a large contingent of people who hate defacing your game. And there are legacy games coming out that are resettable, meaning that you don't permanently hurt the game. But in my opinion, those are campaign games, and they're not legacy games. And in order for it to be as much fun as it is, both this and Risk Legacy, you got to have skin in the game. And that's what I feel like when I play Pandemic Legacy, which right now is the pinnacle of the legacy-style system. So that is Pandemic Legacy, my number 40. But of the many, many, many negative comments I could have chosen on Board Game Geek, the one I liked the most was Dat Boy Chef, who says, "This game sucks. It's boring. And it forced me to kill my wife and 3 children out of mental illness and rage. Otherwise, it would have been a great game." Well, that escalated quickly. My number 39 is Arcadia Quest from Cool Mini or Not. I have several, not expansions really. There's maybe 1 or 2 expansions in here, but lots and lots of characters that make this box surprisingly heavy. It was my number 18 last year, so it slipped quite a bit, just haven't played it very much. I may have taught it a couple times this year. I'm not even sure I personally played it, but a lot of people in my group love it. It has an average user rating of 8.0 on Board Game Geek and is ranked at number 68 over there, which is really high. I'm kind of shocked this is in the top 100, but it is a testament to how popular this game became. Cool Mini or Not, to be very honest, in my personal opinion, has been having more misses than hits lately. I think Arcadia Quest might actually be the last game of theirs that I was just like super duper gung-ho about. And very excited for, and for a lot of good reasons. First off, it's got great miniatures, as you would come to expect from Cool Mini or Not. It's got great theme to it, where you're these competing guilds with monsters out on the board and all this type of stuff, which is kind of generic. But the way it uses these different disparate thematic elements is what's great about it, because it is campaign style. You don't necessarily need to play it that way. You can just play random one-off games and it's still fun. But you're these competing guilds and there's different objectives and goals. It might be going in and smashing a certain treasure chest and getting that, or it might be killing a certain amount of monsters or killing your teammates. But it's very fast, visceral, and fun. That's the important thing, is that it's just, you can knock out a quick game. It's very easy to learn, easy to teach. The rulebook's not great, though. And if you want to go further with it, you do have the campaign mode, where it's sort of, you can get equipment in between, it branches out, but again, it's always competitive, which puts it in stark contrast to other campaign-style fantasy games like Descent. There's tons more content coming out because they did another Kickstarter for expansion stuff, as Cool Mini or Not wants to do. But even just as it is with the base game, it's fantastic. So that is Arcadia Quest from Cool Mini or Not, my number 39. But over on Board Game Geek, GS Reyes says, silly and absurdly random dungeon crawl with a strong PvP element that goes against the theme. I guess it's only popular because of the cutesy miniatures that inexplicably appeal even to some male gamers. Hey. My number 38 is from Renegade Game Studios, and it is called Clank. It is brand new to the list this year, all the way up to number 38. It has an average rating of 8.1 and is ranked number 551 on Board Game Geek. But this game is fairly new, and I'm not even sure it's had a very wide release yet. It came out in limited release at Gen Con, I think maybe at SN2, so I wouldn't put too much stock in those numbers, one way or the other. However, I can attest, this is my list, that Clank is fantastic. First off, it's a deck building game. Immediately I'm going to take notice of it and appreciate it a little more than your average genre of game. But I've played a lot of deck building games at this point, and some of them are just kind of boring and the same thing over and over again. So I'm not going to give any deck builder a pass right off the bat. What makes Clank so interesting is what I've always said. It takes a deck building mechanism which is solid, in this case a sort of Ascension style, where it's got the randomized lineup of cards and then a few static cards that you can always buy. But then it mixes that together with an awesome board element where you are, each adventurer is going off on your own, trying to go down through a dungeon and grab a really expensive relic. Expensive being the key word here, because you just want it for points. And also maybe get some other treasure along the way, and then get out as fast as you can and get a bonus for doing that as well. But of course, as the box indicates, there's a giant dragon down there, and you're really pissing it off by traipsing around its home. And you're going to wake it up, and it's going to start rampaging. And how that works is with this cool thing where, as the name implies, you're making noise. And when you make noise, you have these little cubes have to go into a bag, and if your cubes come out, dragon's going to go for you. So thematic, so fun. It works so well. It's been a hit with everyone that I've played it with because, again, solid deck building mechanisms, not too complicated, not like nothing to write home about in and of itself, but it doesn't matter. That's just in service of a greater game here. And I love it. It's tense, it's fraught. You have to make very important decisions like, do I take a really weak artifact because it's near the top of the dungeon, or do I just keep going and try desperately to get something more expensive, knowing that I might get trapped in the dungeon? I just love the decision making in this game. So that is Clank, brand new to the list, but had to be on there. My number 38. Over on Board Game Geek, well, there actually weren't any really negative reviews for Clank yet. So like I said, it was a fairly new game. But I think I found a suitable substitute. I found a negative review for the movie version of Ratchet and Clank, the video game, from IndieWire. David Ehrlich says, so profoundly bad that it represents the worst of two entirely different mediums, Ratchet and Clank doesn't blur the line between movies and video games so much as it flushes them both in a toilet and forces us to watch as they swirl together down the drain. Wow. I can't believe someone didn't like Clank that much. My number 37 is Codenames from CGE Games, or Codenames Pictures, which is the box that you see here, or Codenames Deep Undercover, which is in this box along with the regular Codenames, all from CGE. Codenames Undercover is the dirty version of the game where you just have penis and vagina, and not anything too much more obnoxious than that. Maybe, I don't know, queef, perhaps? And then there is Codenames, regular Codenames, which uses words, and Codenames Pictures, which uses pictures. Now, no matter how you choose to play the game, the core gameplay is the same. It's a team game, ideally, if you have 4 or more players, and it's best with 4. If you're working together with a partner against the other competing team, one player is the clue giver, the other player is the guesser, or players if you play with larger teams, but don't. And you have an array of cards out there, again, either words or pictures, and you need to, as the clue giver, you need to tell your partner, give them some sort of clue that isn't outright giving away what the cards are, in order to link cards together that belong to your team. Thematically, although it doesn't make any sense thematically, your spy's trying to find your deep cover operatives, but not choose the deep cover operatives for your opponent's team, or choose the assassin, which automatically makes your team lose the game. So you need to find all the right code names out there on the board, or code pictures, and that would have been a terrible name. It's better as code name pictures. Find all those out there before your opponent's team does. That's not good grammar. Neither was that. But it's not a very complicated game, and that's to its credit. Very simple. It's an entry-level game. You can find, I think, all 3 versions of Codenames at Target. That's how entry-level it is. But again, that's a fantastic thing. I can play this with anyone, and it's always been a hit because it's so devious in its simplicity and yet making your brain hurt. And it's great because a casual gamer can have as much fun with it and have as ease of use of it. I've been drinky. Can be as can play the game as easily as someone who is a very experienced gamer, but an experienced gamer with this game can have a lot of fun coming up with very clever clues, especially if you know the person you're giving clues to. So it works on a lot of different levels, and just get the penis version because we all know that you're thinking it. So my number 37 is Codenames. It was number 58 last year. That is from, I didn't even go over any of this stuff. It was ranked number 20 on Board Game Geek. Can you imagine? Even the games that I love, I'm still shocked are so high on Board Game Geek. I don't know what's going on over there. At some point, Ameritrashers just took over the site, which is great. And it's got an average user rating of 8.0. Over on Board Game Geek, there's quite a few people that are not happy with it, and specifically for the core game of Codenames. Blue Horseshoe says, worst game ever! Hyperbole! Just like Battleship, but with words. Except the original Battleship is more fun. In fact, this is more like Battleship the movie. My number 36, I don't have the box for because I loaned it out to someone, and I haven't seen it in like 6 months. It is Abyss, but Movie Magic will have it here. It is Abyss from Asmodee and Bombix. It was my number 35 last year, so it went back 1 space. I would call that a wash. It's kind of amazing when it's that close year to year. Its average user rating is 7.3 on Board Game Geek and has a ranking of 299, which is about where I would suspect it, unfortunately. I'm not surprised by all the rankings of these games. I love Abyss. First off, everyone talks about the artwork of Abyss, and I'm here to attest that it's fantastic. It's one of the greatest looking games ever, from the stark box where you can only see the name on the side of the box, where the front of it is just a giant fish guy head or fish woman head. But then even all the rest of the cards in the game, everything is beautiful. There's little pearls, like plastic pearls that come with the game, which they didn't have to. They could have used tokens. They put pearls that come in a plastic that you hold in a little plastic clamshell. It's amazing. They really went all out on it. If it only looked good and was a terrible game, we wouldn't be having this conversation now because it wouldn't be on my list. But fortunately, it's a very good game. It's a very simple set collection game. You're getting together sets of cards that represent the minions of the deep, like crab people and things. But you're using those cards in order to gain these powerful fishman nobles. This is a One Piece game, by the way. I don't know if you know that. It's tie-in. But no one's going to get that. There are Fishman Nobles that give you special abilities and powers, but a lot of them also points. And some of them also give you keys, which unlock lands that you can get, which are more points. So again, it's all sort of highfalutin set collection, but it's just very fun how you do it. You use your pearls in order to skip people or buy cards, and then there's my words are failing me. Codenames come back. You choose whether to take a card or pass it, and you can bid with pearls or something like that. It's been a while. I told you someone else has my game for like 6 months. And then you can also cards will pile up, and you can take one of those piles instead. Listen, Do what I think, not what I say. And buy this game. It's amazing. I love Abyss. It is great for casual and experienced gamers. My number 36, number 35 last year. Over on Board Game Geek, Week Over says, junk! The only heavy rotation this should get is inside a wood chipper. I love that, actually. You can do that for anything. That guy should put that comment on every single game he hates. My number 35 is new to the list this year, but that is only because it was criminally left off the last year or two. I don't know why, because I've owned this game for several years now, and it is Friday from Friedemann Friese and Friedemann Friese Productions, no, Rio Grande Games. Now, this is first off, over on Board Game Geek, it's ranked number 277, and average user rating of 7.2. Totally understandable, because as acclaimed as this game is, it's a solo-only game. And that's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And in fact, as much as I will play games solo for the purposes of, I didn't get to play this game enough with people, and I need to review it, so I'm going to play it again solo. Even I don't play solo games as much as I might like to, and I kind of whenever I see one, I'm like, is it really that good, though? Friday is that good. It's a very small game, as you can see, and there's not a lot to it, but it is deck building in a sense, a very weird type of deck building, but I always like deck building. You are Robinson Crusoe's man Friday, who realizes that Robinson Crusoe is a moron and is going to die on this deserted island unless you help him. And so what you're trying to do in the game is you start off with some basic cards that all are like, duh, I'm Robinson Crusoe, I'm stupid and weak. And you filter those out, get him, train him, essentially, make him stronger through deck building mechanisms, very light deck building. And you're trying to get him ready to face the pirates who are off the coast, because Robinson Crusoe, I guess. But you can, you might take damage, it might get dangerous for you. You have to face challenges as you go along and decide which challenge, if you're going to face it or run away from it, which if you run away from it, you live to fight another day, but if you face it down, you're going to get stronger, or you're going to make Robinson Crusoe stronger. I'm making it sound more complicated than it is. It's actually a very light game, suitable for, and in that case, suitable for one player, but it's very skill intensive, and you get better as you go. The first game, you're going to be like, what is this crap? I just died. But you just learn little tricks of when you should buy cards, when you should run away, and so on and so forth, and it's fantastic for that little of a footprint. That is Friday from Friedemann Friese, my number 35, criminally left off the list in previous years. But over on Board Game Geek, Clintastic, fan of the Clintons, says, I played it over and over, but I just stopped playing it. So give it a shot if you like one-player games. I'm very confused. Well, there are several deck builders on this segment of the list. I didn't really plan it that way. My number 34 is Paperback from designer and self-publisher Tim Fowers. It was ranked something or other 34 last year, my lovely assistant to the side tells me, and is ranked number 280 on Board Game Geek with an average user rating of 7.4. Wait a minute. It was exactly 34 last year? I didn't even realize that till now. That's pretty amazing. I swear I didn't plan that. Anyways, Paperback, as I said, is a deck building game, but it's also deck building mixed with Scrabble. In fact, after I played this game with someone early on, they bought me a Scrabble dictionary afterwards because we were looking up words on our phones too much. So they just said, screw this. We're going to treat this like Scrabble and get the official dictionary. We've used it every time we've played. But some people don't like to. I totally understand that. Some people say that's cheating, that it breaks the rules, and you're a bad person for doing it. But I'm already a bad person. Paperback is you're buying cards that represent letters, or sometimes a couple of letters, and vowels and things like that, because vowels aren't really letters. And I'm going to get comments about that. You're putting them together into words on your turn. But that's easier said than done. Well, actually, it's not that hard to put together your hand into words. But if you only have a middling hand, you're not going to get much in the game. You're actually using that as currency to eventually buy victory point cards that have really cool, retro, trashy pulp novel covers on them. And it's just so fun. And the game can be very long because a lot of people can be crippled by analysis paralysis. I mean, picture it. It's deck building where you're deciding what to do with your cards, plus Scrabble trying to put words together, but As long as you've got, as long as you're only playing with 2 or 3 players and they don't mind the longer game, it works fantastically well. There are some variants and things like that, like a cooperative mode and special powers and things like that. Basic Paperback is totally fine, and it works really, really well, and it's always been a hit with the people I have played it with. And because it's got just an accessible theme, and it's using those sort of Scrabble-type mechanisms, you can play it with anybody, even very casual gamers. So number 34 is Paperback, but over on Board Game Geek, PTM Junk _ says, if you like word games, you'll love this one. I just don't know no good English. My number 33 is Ghost Stories from Repos Productions, and I think by extension Asmodee at this point. It was my number 22 last year, not a big deal. Average user rating of 7.4 and ranking of 159 on Board Game Geek. It's from Antoine, who is a very popular designer in my collection. I've got quite a few of his games, and he does good stuff, and I think Ghost Stories is one of his best games. Unlike some of his other lighter fare, which would be like Takenoko and Tokaido, I wouldn't call this a very heavy game, but it is more intense than those games. It's fully cooperative. You and the other players are Shaolin monks or something who are trying to stop these evil spirits and this evil dark lord, like the guy from the Shadowlands in Legend of the Five Rings. Someone just put the nerd sign above me. And you're trying to stop his evil forces and eventually stop him as well. But these ghosts and these demons come in waves all along these village tiles that are randomly placed out. And you have to both use your own special powers as Shaolin monks and help each other out, as well as use the village tiles because the villagers don't want to die. And they'll help you out too. And they might do things like grant you protective wards or give you, regenerate your special power tokens and things like that, or just help you push back the ghosts. And so it's very intense. There's a lot of dice rolling and randomness to it. It's just extremely difficult to win this cooperative game, and even on the normal difficulty level. And yet, I love it. I love the stand-up and cheer moments where you're finally able to fend off the last of the demons, even when all hope is lost and you think that everyone is just doomed. But I love it for that reason. That is Ghost Stories, my number 33. But over on Board Game Geek, Zelroy says, wait for it, this is a toy or a puzzle, but not a game. Number 32 is brand new to the list, but in some version or another, it's a very old game. That is Runebound, but this is particularly the 3rd edition of Runebound. Actually, the only one that I've played. It is ranked, I keep forgetting this. My assist, thank you, Vanna. It is ranked number 525 over on Board Game Geek with an average user rating of 7.6. I actually didn't look to see what the previous edition was ranked, but it's probably lower at this point. Now, there's a good reason I never played the other versions of Runebound, specifically the 2nd edition. Number one, it was out of print, and I didn't really feel like going and tracking it down. And I also heard that it was the classic Fantasy Flight Ameritrash, overwhelming, overbearing length, setup, tons of tokens, just too annoying for anything but the most hardcore of Ameritrash players to play. I didn't feel I was quite there, and I didn't want to move backwards. I decided I'd just keep moving forward. But Runebound 3rd edition coming out gave me a good excuse to finally try it, and I was glad that I did. Now, it is still a very long game, but it's very simple to set up and very easy to learn. I would say that a fault of it for other people that I totally understand is that it plays more like a solo game. But I was kind of okay with that. Not so much other people I played with, and I wish that there were official solo rules right in the box. I found some other ones online. But despite all that, I sound like I'm really downplaying this game, but I'm not. I love that this really feels like adventurer going around the countryside, grinding for stuff, and then going to fight the big bad. That's pretty much what every scenario amounts to. There's 2 in the core box, and there's lots of expansions now. And I just love it. Like, I love going around, getting cool stuff, and saving up money, and then getting more stuff, and then deciding when's the right time to go and fight the big bad. And just getting different types of quests out of the way, and then using those quests to get more special skills for yourself. There's lots of characters now, and each character has their own special abilities and bents to them. And I just love it. I mean, there's also a really cool movement mechanism where you roll dice that have pictures of land on them, and then you get to move over those land. And as random as that might seem, and it is, I just think it's another unique thing about the game. So I have no desire to go back. Oh, there's also, people complain about it, but I like the token system. Instead of rolling dice, well, you roll dice for movement, but you roll you throw tokens for attacks in combat with the monsters, and it's so cool. People complain, but I think it's really neat and refreshing. So, what can I tell you? I'm weird like that. So that's my number 32, Runebound 3rd Edition, new to the list. But over on Board Game Geek, Tormenta says, bad, silly, boring, dull beyond belief. Whatever this is, it is not Runebound. Which is funny, because if you look at some of the previous comments for the other editions of Runebound, that is basically what they describe it as. And finally, my number 31 was number 51 last year, so it moved up 20 spots. That is Hanabi, also from Antoine Bauza, and from R&R Games for this particular version. I have several versions of it actually, but this is the tile version from R&R. There's a card version, which is the original one I had and still have somewhere. And I think there's different sizes of cards. There's 7 Wonder Styles cards version. There's tiny like square card versions, and so on. There's even a nicer tile set I kind of wish that I had. But however you choose to play it, this is just an easier way for me and my group. Hanabi is a great, very simple, abstract, cooperative game. Technically, you're putting together fireworks displays, but really what you're doing is just putting together different cards with different numbers and colors. And you're trying to make sets of these cards in sequential order down the board, hopefully from 1 to 5 for each of them, for each of these different colors in the game. And there's not really like a, here's our boss that we have to beat. It's just, what's your score? Get as high a score as you possibly can. But the trick of the game is that whether you're playing with cards or tiles, you cannot see the cards or tiles you have under your control. You can only see everyone else's, and vice versa. And on your turn, you need to either blind play one from your hands, or give a clue to somebody else, or discard one of your tiles or cards, and knowing that you might be getting rid of something really valuable to the group, but knowing that you can't give too many clues because you have a certain amount of clues and you can only recharge them by discarding. And if you play a tile and you're not entirely sure what it is, you've just screwed up big time. So you have to give a clue to the other players just to tell them the color or the numbers of things and hope that they remember. And because you only have a limited amount of clues and a limited amount of information, you need to say, like, give them a clue that tells them a lot with a little. The game is very easy to accidentally manipulate. If you have the right group of people, though, who follow the rules and keep the tenseness and suspense in the game without any shenanigans like this one's red, none of the shit like that. If you get people who aren't going to do that, it's so good. And that's why it shot up my list. This game has probably been on my list every single year, and yet I've played it more in the past year, I think, than I have in any other previous year because I keep busting it out for new people, and it keeps being a hit. And I'm finally starting to notice that, wow, this is the real deal. It's not a flash in the pan. This is one of my favorite games, and I love it because of its simplicity and suspense. Because of that reason, I've actually had 1 or 2 people tell me, Nick, Hanabi is a fantastic game, and I will never ever play it again because it can be very stressful. I love that stress, personally. So that is Hanabi, my number 31, shooting up the list. Over on Board Game Geek, Leroy43 says, hyperbole alert! I'd rather pin my hand to the dinner table with my fork than play this sordid combination of the worst elements of co-ops and memory in a single gaming experience. That's a different game. The fork game? Wow, that was a game I'm not willing to play again. Alright folks, well thank you so much for indulging me in my very, very, very late top 100. We are almost to the end. Next week, or next time, we're going to do number 30 to number 21. Please stay tuned, and thank you so much. Bye-bye.